You know what no one tells you? That sometimes your mitigation strategy isn't just ineffective. It's the very thing making the problem worse. Today, we're diving into one of the most eye-opening corrosion investigations we've ever worked on. A case where corrosion inhibitors, pigging routines, and all the right best practices still couldn't stop the damage. Because the real threat? It wasn't just inside the pipe. It was in how the entire system responded to change. Let's set the scene. We're in a central Alberta well field, a region that's been a hotspot for pipeline failures since the 1980s. A mature field, decades of production, dozens of operators, and over 60 historical failures, all tied to one culprit: accelerated internal corrosion. But this isn't your typical slow wall thinning story. This is what happens when surge events, quick high-volume liquid bursts, kick solids into motion. Solids that should have stayed in the wellbore end up traveling downstream. They settle in low-velocity pockets. They stick around. And that's when the real damage begins. The first mechanism? Classic under-deposit corrosion. Solids settle, water gets trapped. Corrosion kicks off in those hidden occluded zones. We've seen it before. But what we didn't expect was the second mechanism, a far more aggressive one. This one doesn't just hit stagnant water zones. It shows up everywhere across the entire pipeline, even in places we thought were safe. The trigger? Batch inhibitors, doing the opposite of what they're designed to do. Here's how it works. When corrosion inhibitors adsorb onto settled solids, they trap corrosive species right at the pipe wall. They form microenvironments that supercharge corrosion. Instead of protecting the steel, the chemistry creates hot zones for damage. We're talking up to 250 times the baseline corrosion rate. Let me say that again. 250 times the expected rate of metal loss. And here's the kicker. This was happening in pipelines that were actively being treated, actively monitored, actively pigged. It wasn't negligence. It was a blind spot, rooted in how transient flow events change solids' behavior. So how do you respond? We modeled it. We used flow simulation, PipeSim, and Olga-S to understand how water film velocities shift during restarts. We mapped the corrosion risk in real time, and it changed everything. We found that liquid surge rates over 25 cubic meters per hour, even for just a few moments, can mobilize enough solids to trigger the whole corrosion cascade. It's not about average daily flow. It's about what happens in the first seconds of a restart. And if you're not pigging right after that, you're setting yourself up for failure. Here's what's working in the field. Surge-triggered pigging protocols, daily pigging during high-risk production, discontinuing continuous inhibitors in deeply pitted pipelines, batch inhibition, but only when paired with aggressive solids removal. In one high-failure region of the WCSB, these practices eliminated pipeline failures altogether and cut inhibitor costs by 60%. This case isn't just about one corrosion problem. It's about changing how we think about pipeline integrity. Because if we keep using old strategies against new mechanisms, we'll keep repeating the same failures. Field operations need field-smart tools. Flow-aware, solids-aware, chemistry-aware strategies. That's where TPA engineering assessments are heading. Beyond the clipboard, beyond the checklist, into real-time data-driven decision-making. And the big win? We're not just extending pipeline life. We're reclaiming control before the next failure. Thanks for tuning in. If this story hits close to home, or if you want to talk about adapting your own integrity program, reach out. We're here to help.